At 9:17 on a quiet Tuesday morning, Daniel Harper lost everything he had spent 29 years building. 3 days. That was all that stood between him and the pension he was promised. 3 short days erased by one closed office door and a sentence read from a paper that never once said his name with respect. Daniel had arrived early that morning like he always did. The parking lot outside Whitmore and Lane Manufacturing was still half empty, the Ohio sky gray and low. He liked those few minutes of silence before the machines woke up. They gave him time to breathe, time to remember why he stayed all these years. He never chased titles. He chased stability. He chased a future where hard work meant security. For nearly 3 decades, Daniel had shown up. He worked through recessions, leadership changes, and long winters, when overtime was the only thing keeping food on the table. He trained younger workers who later became his bosses. He fixed problems no one else wanted to touch. And he believed what the company handbook said: loyalty would be rewarded. That Tuesday was supposed to be routine. Daniel had already planned his final week. He had joked with coworkers about retirement fishing trips and teased them about missing his bad coffee. Friday was the day his pension officially vested. He had circled it on his calendar at home, right next to his late wife Laura's birthday. At 9:12, an email popped up on his screen. "Please come to my office." Greg Daniel felt a small pinch in his chest, but ignored it. Greg Whitmore had been his supervisor for 2 years, a polished man with smooth words and restless eyes. Daniel stood, straightened his jacket, and walked down the hall without rushing. He had nothing to hide. Greg didn't smile when Daniel walked in. He closed the door instead. Daniel noticed the paper on the desk first. Clean, printed, prepared. "Daniel," Greg said, folding his hands, "this is difficult." Daniel sat slowly. Years of experience told him everything he needed to know before the next sentence landed. "Due to restructuring," Greg continued, "your role has been eliminated. Today will be your last day." The words felt heavy, but Daniel stayed calm. "I retire on Friday," he said. "My pension vests Friday." Greg looked down. "Yes, I know." The silence that followed felt louder than any factory floor. Daniel searched Greg's face for something: regret, shame, honesty, but found none. "So this is about money," Daniel said quietly. Greg didn't argue. "HR will explain the details." Security arrived faster than expected. No scene, no shouting. Just polite instructions and a cardboard box waiting by his desk. 29 years packed in under 5 minutes. As Daniel walked out, coworkers watched from a distance. Some looked angry. Others looked scared. Everyone understood what had just happened. Outside, Daniel stood alone in the parking lot. The building behind him looked the same as it always had, but now it felt like a stranger. His hands trembled as he set the box on the passenger seat. The engine didn't start right away. Neither did his thoughts. At home, the house felt too quiet. The walls still carried Laura's Touch family photos, warm colors, a chair by the window where she used to read. Daniel set the box down and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the spot where she once drank tea every evening. He thought about the nights he worked late while she waited up. The weekends he missed because overtime meant better benefits. The promise he made to her when she got sick that everything would be okay once retirement came. His phone rang. It was his daughter, Emily. "They fired you?" she asked, her voice tight. 3 days early, Daniel replied. "That's not legal," she said. "It happened," he answered softly. Later that afternoon, an official email arrived. Polite language, clean sentences. No pension eligibility. No apology. Just finality. Daniel felt something shift inside him, not anger, not sadness, but clarity. He realized this wasn't an accident. It was timing, calculated and quiet. He walked into the living room and picked up an old photo of Laura. She was smiling, standing by the lake, sunlight in her hair. "What do I do now?" he whispered. The answer came in the form of a name he hadn't thought about in years. Sarah Collins. She had worked in compliance. She asked hard questions. She left suddenly after disagreements with upper management. Daniel remembered helping her once during a safety audit, staying late to pull records no one else wanted to find. He picked up his phone. The number was still saved. Daniel hesitated for only a moment, then pressed call. As the phone rang, he felt nervous, but also steady. This wasn't revenge. It was truth. Sarah Collins speaking. Daniel closed his eyes. "It's Daniel Harper," he said. "I think something is very wrong." The line stayed open, and everything was about to change. The phone call changed everything. Sarah Collins speaking. The voice said calm, professional, unmistakable. Daniel Harper's chest tightened. "Sarah, it's Daniel. We worked together years ago at Whitmore and Lane." There was a pause, then recognition. "The maintenance supervisor. You helped me during the safety audit." "I was fired today," Daniel said, his voice steady but low, heavy with exhaustion. 3 days before my pension vested." Silence. "You're not the first," Sarah said finally. Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" She explained everything in the diner later that week, a small place with coffee that never quite cooled fast enough. Patterns, documents, employees let go just before retirement. Just before benefits kicked in. Managers who claimed restructuring while quietly reducing long-term obligations. It was organized, deliberate, and entirely legal on paper, but wrong. Morally, undeniably wrong. Daniel listened. He felt anger rise and fall, replaced by a strange calm. Sarah had kept copies of old reports, internal memos, and notes from her years at the company. She handed them to him, neatly organized in folders that smelled faintly of old paper and promise. "Why help me?" Daniel asked. "Because someone had to." She said. Her tone wasn't accusatory. It was matter of fact. "Because fairness matters. And because you're the kind of man who deserves it." Daniel felt a flicker of warmth. Not romantic, not yet something else. Respect, trust, hope over the next few weeks. Daniel worked with a lawyer Sarah recommended. Every day felt like preparing for battle, but it wasn't loud or aggressive. It was strategic, meticulous. They collected pay stubs, internal memos, emails, and every record that proved his dedication and the company's pattern. Journalists asked questions. Regulators took notes. Whitmore and Lane didn't respond immediately. The building that had felt so safe for decades now seemed small, fragile, almost guilty. Daniel didn't gloat. He didn't yell. He just waited. During this time, he and Sarah met often. At diners, on walks by Lake Erie, even just phone calls over quiet nights. They spoke about work, of course, but also life loss. Love, regrets, small victories, and the lingering ache of missed chances. Daniel spoke of Laura, and Sarah spoke of her choice to leave the company rather than compromise her integrity. There was understanding in each other's silence. Daniel realized something important. The past, no matter how cruel, did not define the future. The pension mattered, yes, but so did dignity, honesty, and human connection. 3 months later, the settlement arrived. Full pension, compensation, justice, quiet but undeniable. Daniel's hands shook as he read the confirmation email. The office that had once held 30 years of his life no longer had power over him. But what surprised him most wasn't money. It was the way life unfolded afterward. Sarah called one evening, her voice warm but teasing. "Want to walk by the lake?" Daniel hesitated, then smiled a rare, unguarded smile. He met her the next afternoon. The sun bounced off the water. The breeze lifted the weight from his shoulders. Conversation flowed easily, naturally. They laughed at small things, shared memories of the company, and even joked about the absurdity of corporate life. It started as friendship, but soon grew into something gentler, deeper. Neither rushed. Both had been hurt before. Both understood the value of honesty, loyalty, and trust. They discovered joy in quiet moments. Coffee in the morning, walks at sunset, dinners at small, overlooked restaurants. Daniel had not expected love again. He hadn't even allowed himself to consider it. But Sarah's presence was different from anyone else's. She didn't fix him. She didn't judge him. She simply walked beside him, steady, kind, and brave. Their connection blossomed slowly, rooted in shared trials and mutual respect. Daniel saw in her the same qualities he valued in himself: integrity, patience, courage. And Sarah saw in him the man she admired long before the company's greed tried to erase his years of service. Life didn't erase the past, but together they learned to navigate it. The injustice of being fired 3 days early became a story of resilience, of reclaiming dignity, of finding unexpected love when life seemed at its cruelest. Years later, Daniel sat on the porch with his granddaughter, Sarah, beside him. The pension was secure, the house filled with laughter and light. He told her a simple lesson: do honest work, stand up when it matters, and never underestimate the power of one phone call. Daniel's story wasn't just about fighting back. It was about hope, about integrity, about love that waits patiently for the right moment, often appearing where you least expect it. And it all began with a single phone call that refused to accept the unfairness of a system built to overlook the people who mattered most. Some mornings, he would glance at the lake and Sarah would squeeze his hand. Together, they had turned a bitter ending into a new beginning. The company had tried to take everything, but in the end, Daniel gained something far richer: peace, security, and a companion who understood the heart of a man, who had given decades of his life to work with dignity. And as the sun set over the water, Daniel knew he would never forget that Tuesday morning, nor the power of truth, persistence, and human connection.